Welcome to the next video in our quadcopter build, where we're building this thing here. This is the BrainFPV RE1 and their little MPB power distribution board as well. In this video what we're going to do is get Betaflight onto this board, and we're going to pop the power distribution board in and add the little risers that we need to connect the two boards together, because they stack and make all the connections they need to between themselves, which is cute, and also connect the power system. So in the last two videos that we did, we had a little bit of a look at the flight controller, why it was different, and then in the previous video we actually put our frame together. And I'm going to take this top off, so we have our motors connected, we have our ESCs connected up, but at the moment that's all we've got. So now in this video, hopefully by the end, we'll have a flight controller running Betaflight, and we'll have all the power connections made off. Then we can come back next time, finish off the setup, wire up the ESCs and the FPV equipment, and give it a go. Now everything that we're doing in here is already documented in the manual. Now the manual is downloadable from the website. You can see all my scribbles on here as I've been trying to figure out and make sure that I'm doing everything in the right way. And we are going to follow pretty much the order of everything in here, with the exception that the FPV equipment I want to use hasn't yet arrived, so we're going to wait for that. The only bit of soldering I'm going to do on the flight controller is this little bit here, where in step 2 it says select the receiver voltage. I don't think it's going to make a difference because we're just testing. We can flash it here, but you can either set it for 5 or 3.3 volts. 5 volts is going to be great for your FR Sky receivers and your standard stuff. 3.3 volts is more typical for things like satellite receivers. So each of these steps is what we're kind of going to run through in the video. The only difference, of course, is that we are going to play with Betaflight, not droning. And all that information at the moment is up on the website. So here's a couple of images from the website that explains what we're doing here. We're going to download the latest Betaflight Brain RE1.hex file. If you click on that link to the right hand side there, then you can download it. Don't worry, I'll put the links in the description so you can find this stuff. Then you have to boot the flight controller while shorting the boot pins on the back. If we just jump back to the desk very quickly, there are the two boot pins. I'm just going to have to short those. If it's been flashed with Betaflight already, it should work fine, but we're going to go through the process as it's in the manual. Then we are going to select the hex file and flash it to the board. That should be pretty much as far as we get with this. The only thing we might do is solder the headers on it when we know it's happy. On the power distribution board, there is only a handful of things that we need to do. There's these risers that we do need to pop onto here. There's one on this side and one on this side. There's popping those on, and then it's just a case of installing it into the craft, making sure we've got enough headroom so that these two things can fit together one on top of the other. Once we've done that, we'll just do all the soldering for the ESCs onto the pads. And the pads are quite nice in that it's got a plus and minus at each corner, and the two pads here are for the battery connection. I do like power distribution boards where they've thought about it. So first of all, let me very quickly solder that 5-volt pad. Now let's connect this up to the PC and see what we can see. So here on the PC we've downloaded and started Betaflight. Now if you're watching this and this isn't making any sense, then this is probably not the build series for you. What I recommend is go and have a look at the build series 1 or build series 2. Those are where we go through each individual step. This build series is really more for the builder who's had a couple of builds under their belt. So what we're going to do is, let me just very quickly show you the instructions where they are. So here on BrainFPV, here's the instructions that we're going to follow to flash Betaflight on it. If I just go back one level, if you open the main website, go into support and scroll down, then here is the blog post on running Betaflight, and that is the bit that we're actually looking at here. So what we're going to do is follow each of these instructions. So I've already downloaded the latest Brain Hex. If you click on that, it'll take you to the GitHub stuff and you can download it. So I've already got that, but again, tell you what, let's just put it brand new latest version onto the desktop, and that way then I have the absolute latest and greatest, but I don't think it's been updated since I downloaded it last time. And then what we're going to do is we're going to follow each of these steps. Now the trickiest thing here is going to be holding the pads while I plug it in. So what I've got is the flight controller actually upside down. Here's an image of kind of how I did it, where you can kind of see the bottom of the flight controller, and all I'm going to do here is hopefully, while I've got the pads shorted, plug it in, and then we're going to go through the firmware flashing stuff. So with everything else being equal, I'm just going to press my little flat bladed screwdriver over those two pads. I'm going to plug it in. I've taken that off the pads, and now I've got drivers being installed onto the PC, so something's definitely happening. This PC is one that we've never actually used with this board, but we flash a lot of Seriously Pro and KISS flight controllers and all kinds of things on here as well. Now on the board itself, let me just take a quick video of that so you can see what it looks like. What we have is it's just kind of sat there now with the looks like a red and blue light pulsing together. Now I'm not sure if that means it's ready to rock and roll. Let me check the instructions. Going to do exactly the same process. Going to short those two pins at the back, plug in the USB cable, and then let's try the firmware flasher. So we're going to go firmware flasher. We're going to load firmware local. We're going to go on to the desktop and choose that firmware that we just downloaded. That's all we've got to do, and then click flash firmware. Now it's saying failed to open serial port, so I don't think I've managed to short those pins out properly, so let me try that again. Okay, so I've had a couple of attempts using the Betaflight flasher and it isn't happy at all. Although the board appears, I can get it into bootloader mode so that the blue light appears on the board itself. It's not appearing as a COM port that I can play with the flasher. So, in the absence of anything else, I'm going to try the second way to install it. So here on the screen, that's the Betaflight configurator that we're struggling with at the moment. We're going to flash it now using Dronin ground control software. Now, Dronin can be downloaded from dronin.org. We've just downloaded the Windows installer and just quickly installed it. And we also then, because in here we've got to download a TLFW file, then we've gone and downloaded that too. So that's on our desktop. So let's jump into Dronin and see whether we get any more help. So this is what Dronin looks like. It's successor to the Open Pilot project that we were a big fan of, but we are just going to use this at the moment just to push the Betaflight software onto the board, or attempt to, because we seem to be struggling a bit here. So if we read the instructions for this, then we are going to disconnect from USB and power. We are going to go to the firmware tab and click rescue, and then we're going to connect the board, which is just like we used to do with the CC3Ds when we were playing with CleanFlight. So let's go into Dronin. We're going to click on firmware. We're going to click on rescue, and we're going to plug the board in. Okay, so we have a green pulsing light on the board itself. That means we're in bootloader mode, which is promising. That's a little bit further than we got before. So the next thing we need to do, if we go and look at the instructions, open file, click the file that we downloaded. So let's do that. So we're going to go open file, let's go onto the desktop, open that. You see at the moment it looks like it's the Dronin one that's on here rather than the Betaflight version. So let's flash. So I'll try and do a little video of the board as we're actually doing this here, and hopefully this is going to work. At least we have some communication happening, and according to that it's happy. Okay, let me unplug the board. Let's close Dronin. Thank you Dronin for all your help. Let's start up our friend Betaflight. Let's plug the board back in, and hopefully, I'm not going to short any pads or anything, hopefully it will appear. Interestingly now we have some more stuff happening, and we have a COM port we can talk to. This looks promising. Let me click on connect, move the board. Hey, fantastic, finally we have the firmware on. So that's what we ended up having to do. So apologies for the slightly long-winded way of doing that, but again, I'm actually shooting this as I'm actually doing it here on the PC, and this is just unfortunately the way it sometimes works. So now we know that the board is all configured, it's working, we have Betaflight on it. Let me jump back to the desk and show you what I've done connecting all of the ESCs up to the power distribution board. You know, after fighting like that with boards, and sometimes that's just the way it happens. I know occasionally people look at the videos that we do here and just think everything goes perfectly, and 9 times out of 10 it does, but occasionally it doesn't, and I think it's worthwhile us sharing those experiences for 2 reasons really. One, to kind of show some of the troubleshooting and how we try and figure stuff out, and secondly, just to prove to everybody that, you know what, anybody can have a bad day or can struggle with the technology, particularly with something that's as new as this. Here is the power distribution board all put together, and it was just nice to just do some good old-fashioned soldering after messing with a PC. So we have all the plus wires from the speed controllers going to the plus pads, the negative wires from the speed controllers going to the negative pads, absolutely as you'd expect. Nice big whacking XT60 connector out the back. The only other things I've done here, now I know that the board is happy, I've also put on the 2 risers here. So there's a set of 3 at the back and a set of 2 at the front. Let me bring it really close, hopefully you'll get that on the camera. And on the bottom of the flight controller, we have the little blob of solder on the 5 volts, and I have the other sides of those 2 pieces connected. And what it means is that as I install the flight controller, it's going to make the important connections between the power distribution board and the flight controller automatically. Now that's just make sure those pins are lined up, I don't want to bend them. The trick here is when you're actually soldering the pins to the top, I would actually put the board together and position the pins, and then that means that the height of the pins and the connection is perfect, and once you've made it you can just snip the top off. So there we are, we're kind of coming to the end of this video. So now we have the power system set, we have the flight controller plugged in and ready to rock and roll. I need to put the 4 nuts on here and potentially put the top on as well. But next time when we come back, we'll connect the ESCs, we'll do the configuration and connect the receiver, and we'll also connect up the FPV bits and pieces too. The FPV equipment is going to be powered off these little pads at the front of the power distribution board, and the video in and video out is going to happen through these pads here on the flight controller, because that is where all the on-screen goodness is going to happen. So join us next time where we'll have a look at those steps. Thank you for taking the time to watch that video. There are lots of other videos on the channel, and they're carefully ordered into playlists, so you may find that there are other videos on this same subject that you can go and watch. So I would recommend going into the playlist area of Painless360 YouTube channel and looking around and seeing what there is. You never know what you might find. Thanks for watching, please like, subscribe, and happy flying.